my gosh, hello, welcome to the fourth episode, question mark, of the anti
I was just wondering what episode.
No.
I shouldn't interrupt the title.
Let me
For
do it right.
branding.
Welcome to the fourth episode of Lucy and Corey's Anti-Power Hour. RIP to our lost other episode that tragically died due to my parents on the internet.
I'll forever remember that glorious episode. That it's so much better than our other episodes. People have no idea.
Yeah, that'll never be that good again. They missed out. But you're indoors today, which is exciting.
I'm indoors. It's a storm outside. It's pretty bad, so I figured.
So the superheroes will protect you? I'm hoping.
Yeah, that was the logic behind that. Like, they fight off the lightning bolts.
They might.
Or they command lightning bolts of their own, though. That's a popular...
I guess right over here I have a Superman, a Domo playing the guitar, the Iron Giant, and Totoro. So I'm actually in pretty good hands, too.
Whoa, now that is a sick lineup. Imagine if that was the Avengers,
That would be very...
That's awesome. I think I have the same Iron Giant toy you have.
As well you should.
Kelly got me that a few years ago. And
as well she should.
A delightful movie. We should probably just talk about that movie for the entire episode.
I know. It's so good.
It is.
I tried to make my dad watch it. I was like, look, you were approximately 10 years old the year the Iron Giant came to Earth.
Did you like it? Dads.
Someday I'll try again. He couldn't quite get his attention at the time. He's very critical of
He's just very critical in general.
He's critical of movies, but movies. It maybe could have gotten him. I don't know. I just feel like...
What movies does he like? Like The Copper Giant? Does he like that?
Movies
that's
about
what hated him.
World War II. Movies that are in black and white.
Your dad is the most dad to ever dad, I think. I've never met him, but from what I've heard,
he's very dad. It's
110% dad.
Mm-hmm. Now that's like the worst segue I can think of to start talking about the submersible. Hey, it's a very elegant cat tail.
It's just a tail. There's no attached animal to this. There's just a floating part.
Last time we discussed rich people buying paintings by Hitler.
Yes,
which I have some sympathy for because not
Hitler. That was phrased.
Oh man, out of context, gold.
You clarify. Gold,
Jerry. No, I would be tempted to buy really weird, creepy, morbid historical artifacts. I might also be. I would be too claustrophobic to go in a submersible down to the Titanic. But if I wasn't, I'd fucking get one that wasn't so chintzy.
You're too what to do that?
Claustrophobic.
Oh yeah, me too. Oh man, I'm just generally pretty risk averse. I think I'm not very much of a daredevil.
I'm pretty risk averse. Like when I went to Belize in college, I went into a cave. Like it was like a.
And you never came out.
It was like the entrance to the mine, one of the entrances to the mine underworld, like supposedly, which was very legit. I was very claustrophobic, but I was still pissed off that the other people, the girls, would not turn off their cell phones and stuff so we could get the perfect dark. Because if you're going to go that far, let's do it for reals.
Let's get off the phones. Yeah, phones these days.
The phones worked.
They're not just ruining our world, they're ruining the underworld now. Come on.
Man.
Can't catch a break.
Like, what the hell? I was sleeping. They're going to be so mad. I'm gonna curse on. Maybe that's what happened to the world. Got cursed.
Well, just to get back onto the topic, if that's viable for us, but I don't think I would venture down to the Titanic. But I would love to see it if I didn't have to experience the necessary thing to get there, right? But yeah, I definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't subject myself to that at all.
I was very interested in the Titanic for several years. I'm always still a little bit interested. I am an annoying that guy. If I can add a fun fact.
Oh yes, of course. We should have a little graphic for that fun fact. Lucy's fun facts.
This is very low budget here, but
fair enough.
The Titanic is a very human drama. You know, it took 2 hours and 40 minutes to sink. It had 3 different classes. Like, it's like, you know, it's theatrical. So seeing its spooky watery grave would be interesting, but to me it's not what's most interesting about it at all. So that
Oh,
is
like,
mentioned.
well, what's most interesting about it? Like the actual event that occurred? Like, well, I can't. I mean, I feel like most things, the
Yeah,
remains are what they are.
and but like I like to go. Where did I go last summer? I went to the Little Bighorn battlefield.
Oh,
And that's, you know, it happened right there, right? Whereas the Titanic on the floor of the ocean, 13,000 feet down, it didn't happen there. I mean, those people had
yeah.
died before they got to that bottom. You know, it's a
Yeah.
historical relic, but it's not, to me it's not even the same thing to go there and be like, yes, it happened right here. So like, I don't know.
This is an interestingly morbid uh, observation that I've never thought of. It's still the boat. It's still the boat. You like
The ship, damn it, ship.
ship. Sorry, ship.
Um,
Shit.
I know. I mean, if I had no claustrophobia and billions of dollars, I would be judged by many a Twitter leftist for spending my money on dubious pursuits. But I would get in a sub that was painted orange and had a window glass that was for 13,000 feet and more.
Like the orange. Why orange? Because that's like the old Nickelodeon thing. Like the orange. Like that's what I'm imagining. Is that?
No, I mean,
Oh,
I think they have now found wreckage, so they probably died on Sunday. That's probably better.
right.
You know, it's unpleasant to think about. But not only was the submersible kind of, you know, chintzy and not well, you know, he didn't have a beacon, and it was painted like gray, the color of the ocean. So conceivably, they could have been on the surface and suffocated because they weren't easy to see. There's a reason that life jackets are orange, so you can see
Oh,
them.
you're so smart, Lucy. That is. I thought. I mean, orange is a great color too. I thought maybe it was just that's your favorite color.
I have thought more about nautical disasters than your average person, perhaps, in this current year. I don't know that much. I just think about them. The Lusitania is only 300 feet down, people. You can practically free dive to it. Don't do that, you'll die. But
I'll do that.
don't do it. So I was going on a Wikipedia journey about who has ever been rescued from a submarine. And the track record's not great, but it's happened occasionally.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been on submarines that are, like for you to go in and like look around while it's on the surface.
Yeah,
I've never gone.
Center.
Yeah, I've never gone into the ocean inside a submarine.
Have you gone on the ocean? In like a
What do you mean on a boat?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. That's not my favorite thing. I didn't know what you meant by on the ocean. Like, did I walk across the Atlantic?
Yeah.
No.
No, they're a little scary. The ocean is scary.
What, ocean, submarines, all the above?
Even boats, even small boats in Belize going to an island.
Yeah, I mean we're not fish. Are we fish? Last time I checked, we're not equipped for that. We're not equipped for living out on the water.
People also pointed out on the internets this unfortunate week is that you can probably survive longer in the vacuum of space than you can, I mean, at that depth. Like,
oh really?
They say you can probably survive a minute or two in the vacuum of space, and you definitely can't survive a minute or two at that depth. So
yeah,
we are squishy, delicate creatures.
Very
it's
squishy.
Time to become orbs of light, of transhumanist light. So
that doesn't sound that much fun either, though.
This flesh prison blows.
What do you do as an orb, though? What are you going to do as an orb? I don't
know. That's just like the most future thing I could think of as being an orb.
The most future thing, being an orb.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you're not wrong there. You're not wrong.
So there is a Doctor Who season finale where that sort of happens to humanity, and it's real bad. So not that kind of orb.
Really? Oh, okay. I'm not up on my Doctor Who episodes on any of them, really.
Yeah, you should.
All right.
You should be. Okay.
Should be.
But the real question is, what is the question?
Oh, later. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well,
what the question is.
the eternal thing with news, news that's big news, which this submersible obviously was, is that certain people never get to be the big news. And the comparison in this case was there was a boat of several hundred refugees that I bet Greece probably said, "We don't care to rescue you." The Greek Coast Guard claims that the refugees didn't want help because they were trying to get. I don't know if there was a wet foot, dry foot type of policy where they might have actually wanted to get to land, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't buy it. And people kept saying, why don't we care more about those people? Which we obviously should.
Yeah.
And something that struck me is that we do have this idea. The interruption of normalcy is a story. So a rich, privileged people are so rich that they can accidentally get themselves killed under the sea. But refugees are poor and are, we may not want them to suffer, but aren't they always suffering? It's just like the status quo over there. That's just how life interrupted, middle class life, a rich life, we get that, but refugees, that's just how it is,
Yeah. I think I think people have are right about the news and culture obviously reflect certain biases, and obviously I think generally culture has this kind of nationalist or nativist bias, and so we broadly totally underrate the suffering and the newsworthiness of refugees, for instance. And I think I totally agree with the people pointing that out, basically. But I think also you make a good point too, in that the news and culture also selects for weirdness or novelty. Like this is a particularly strange event, a particularly strange event to imagine yourself in a way, and there's kind of a weirdness surrounding it that I think also helps explain a little bit of why it's so talked about as well.
I mean, what I was saying with the refugees also, though, it's bad that we think of it that way. That, poor people are always struggling, so that's not a story. I mean, I tried to picture myself as a refugee as well.
Sure.
But there's something about us thinking it's supposed to be like that, not even in a particularly callous way, just that's how it is way.
Yeah, kind of complacency, I think that.
I do think when we thought this was a ticking clock situation, which it probably never actually was, that also strikes us,
Yeah,
if they had been somewhere incapacitated and had 80 hours of oxygen left, then, we like a self-written narrative, and 80 hours of oxygen is a great...
Yeah, people being trapped often become news stories, right? Like whether it's
miners,
miners. I was thinking absolutely mining accidents. Also, just individual, like little girls in America, the '90s news story that fall into
wells,
wells.
Baby Jessica.
Right. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I guess that's a good point too. This element of that narrative of being trapped.
But I've always tried to explain it away that way, because I do kind of know what narratives grab me, and I don't always go with the crowd, but obviously I frequently do. But it's still, there is something that's gone wrong there, and Americans supposedly in particular are pretty bad at thinking about the rest of the world. So I don't know, I don't know how we fix that. I don't know how we fix the news, much less the humanity.
Yeah, I mean, the news is probably always going to come with some pretty bad incentives, and
stuff.
I mean, I don't really watch the news, so
no, I never watch the news. That's totally useless as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
but I didn't actually check the net worth of those poor people, but the discourse did greatly involve billionaires, did it not?
Yeah.
And some people were calling other people callous, and some people were probably being callous, and some people were totally captivated, I think, by the story, and were really hoping for a triumphant rescue mission.
Yeah.
And
I think it's a mistake to take the like you said, it is a problem that news underreports on the deaths of poor people or refugees, etc. Um, but you know, I don't know how to like people go too far in the other direction, and you take the callousness, the callousness in one hand to justify callousness in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Like just because people are callous in regards to refugees doesn't mean we should be callous in regards to non-refugees or something. It's like two wrongs don't make a right. And like so the reaction of like, oh well, let's just extend the callousness and narrow our circle of empathy even more because other people somewhere else are not having the appropriate moral reaction. That's just an absurd sort of approach to things. It's depressing to see it.
It also comes down though to this idea that like it's a very normie thing to mourn everyone's death equally. So when Donald Rumsfeld died, we should immediately have been like, oh, family. Like, yes, I'm not going to go punch them in the face about it. But, if Henry Kissinger was on that submersible or, an adorable cherub-faced child, like, I mean, which one do you care about more? Like, some people,
Right.
it's the assumption that all rich people are sort of the top tier evil in a way that I don't fully embrace. The very fact that they have that much money often comes down to people talking about it as if, not that they used a system that benefited them or these other reasons, but they're rich directly because people are poor. Like, it's like a one and then the other thing. As if there's only been $500 since the world began, and they took it from a poor person. And that's not how wealth works, if nothing else. Kitty.
Hello, Felix. He has some major thoughts. I don't know. I think I disagree on maybe the extent to which I think the super wealthy get their money from positive sum exchanges like you're describing, which leftists do underrate, versus negative sum exchanges, rent seeking, things like that, which I think is tends to be a greater source of the wealth of the extreme wealthy. But I don't even think this is super relevant. I think to even get to the stage where you're debating the merits or lack thereof of billionaire wealth, I don't even see why that's relevant to the question of should we take glee, like actively, like in the suffering and deaths of people, because that's also different from what you said. Like, I may not mourn the deaths of people. I don't mourn the deaths of most people. Most people who die, I never know. They're strangers to me, and so it's totally like to not mourn someone. Well, that's makes sense if there's someone who's not part of your life necessarily, but to like actively take glee and to like cultivate this and to like think that's like reflective of like an emotionally proper attitude and response to things, I think is the thing where it's like becomes like corrupting, and it disorients ourselves, I think, and then who knows where we're taking glee, or what deaths we're taking glee in then next. It all doesn't sit well with me.
I mean, to try to push against that, I guess, like, there is a certain system set up and some people are very screwed. And, I don't know if you want to call it socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. I've heard some people described it as, which is not maybe accurate to the definitions we might use, but at least sort of gets the point across. We don't necessarily have a limited amount of empathy, but in practice, maybe we do. And we certainly have a limited attention span. So to be sort of instinctually annoyed by the disproportionate coverage of this is one thing. A lot of it's pure edgelording, though, Like,
yes. And I think it's okay to be annoyed at the disproportionate coverage for the reasons we kind of got into. But even still, that's independent of just this approval and of glee in what actually occurred.
And like, what's the contest? Like, how do you win the edgelord contest if you, not only do I not feel that bad, but I hope they suffered as long as possible. I don't hope Henry Kissinger suffers as long as possible when he dies, which, checking my watch, but, like, because what good would that do? Anything.
Right. Yes, I think this is a very and it is difficult to resist. Take the most extreme cases of someone like Hitler or some of the very worst people ever in history, and it's difficult to resist the temptation to want them to pointlessly suffer, not just to
Right.
end their harm towards others, which is a good and of course
Right.
righteous and necessary goal, but to on top of that to both find this extra suffering justifiable and to think it's like it should be a source of joy to others. I think we should resist that temptation, even in these difficult cases.
It's bad for us, but I can't prove that to these people that it's bad for your, metaphorical soul, because I don't
Well,
know.
I don't know. I mean, what you say about the system, I totally agree with. And righteous anger can be a thing. I think anger absolutely is an emotionally appropriate and morally appropriate attitude in many cases. It can be disproportionate, but anger, but no, I think no anger at anything, no anger at severe injustice. I mean, that seems like an inappropriate emotional response. So anger, sure, but this like glee and pointless suffering, I don't really know how to square any of that with a lot of other views and attitudes that left wingers often profess in regards, when it's cases like the death penalty
Hmm.
or prison
Yeah,
abolition, and it's like we're so
absolutely.
against pointless suffering there. We just want purely defense and restoration as far as we can get it, as far as is viable. But the whole opposition of those things seems a lot grounded on the fact that pointless suffering is bad for everyone involved,
Hmm.
however karmic it feels to us in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, some of these same people might have, cringed at the description of a California gas chamber in 1980 and, some mass rapist murderer choking to death for 45 minutes, and they wouldn't be like, sweet, unless that person had killed their loved one, because a lot of those people feel like that's wrong, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah.
And then you can get too tedious, like, bro, technically Hitler never killed anyone, so like,
Well,
or the powerful people above it all who probably caused some misery, is that worse, etc., blah blah blah. I just like, it's bad. Can't you tell it's bad for you to behave like this, to think in those terms? I don't know. I think it's a
yeah,
tragedy in the cases when somebody's death, and I'm not these people in particular. When someone's death is good for the world, that is a tragedy. It's like, I've high fived my now husband when Kim Jong Il died.
yeah,
And also it's like, what an unfortunate thing that someone can live their life in a way that their death is good.
yeah.
That's a tragedy in itself.
Yes, I agree with that, and I don't think anything about trying to resist those temptations to take joy in pointless suffering has to deny anything about what you're saying about sometimes, right, like it's obviously good for the world for some person's activities to cease if
Yep.
the activities they're engaged in is harm towards others and stuff like that. So it's difficult to reign, and and I think there's a lot of kind of moral issues that point in different directions, and so I get why there's a lot of, I think, sometimes nuanced even disagreements here. But it's also been depressing to see some of the worst kinds of reactions,
Yeah.
both in the direction of, oh well, I hope they suffer as much as possible, and that makes me happy, to the other direction, as we were discussing earlier, of a sort of defensiveness, a sort of defensive posture of like. Um, of callousness towards the groups that people think the news should cover more of, like refugees or other
Hmm.
suffering, that I think people get pushed into there. So I've seen both of that, and it's depressing.
Oh my gosh, I had a bunch of segues and now I don't know what they were. One other thing
That's a
though
perfect segue.
is the fact that there was a father and son on there, and I don't know if the
Yeah,
lesson here is don't trust your parents that much, but like, I saw some weird talk about like, well, he wasn't a child, he was 19. So, which like a leftist will be saying, like, in the same way that a right winger is like, darn it, our 19-year-olds play video games now and they used to storm Normandy. And like, have you
yeah.
looked at the faces of some of those 19-year-olds who have
Well,
like,
it
they look like
often,
babies?
yeah,
So like, are we really doing that? Well, as soon as, 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years ago, he stopped being someone we can feel sympathy
right,
for, someone whose life was barely getting started, who presumably trusted their father not to make a quite bad decision. I mean, like, what does
yeah,
it cost you to like not be happy about that, or like, he was a fucking adult legally, so I don't care. Like, it's
yeah.
weird. It's
No, it's
very
that's
strange.
That's an exceedingly strange sort of line of argument, and I think feels kind of very ad hoc defense of the feelings that person already has towards the situation. Because,
And
like you said, it's so absurdly arbitrary, and it doesn't matter, and it gets used in the other direction, like especially not just what you said, but issues of like cop killings
mhm.
of young men,
Oh yeah, he was an
and
adult.
talk.
He was a
Yeah,
tall 15 year
this
old with a
it's just so whatever the issue, whatever partisan decide, you can like sort of say one thing about what someone age suggests about their moral culpability or not, and it's all, and none of it really matters what their age is. Why does that matter? Like you said.
I mean, only that, and it almost sounds too religious sometimes, but what has a 5 year old ever done in life? Like, all they've done is not get to live life so far.
Oh
So,
no, sure. I mean, I agree about that. There's with small children and young people, of course. But like my point was that why would it change in the sense of like why do you get to a certain age and then the sympathy goes away, like you had
yeah.
said, like that it doesn't make any sense to me.
And that age is the legal age of adulthood in America, except for drinking. That's the age when it's
Right,
very
right,
conveniently picked.
yeah,
I also think that some of the people, the not edgelords, but the ones who pride themselves on this being a deep political point, I feel like they're the same people who think every revolution is good and that, they want to
yeah,
bring up the guillotines every 5 minutes. They're really stoked about it.
yeah,
They're the naive ones that are like, well, if we just kill all the people that are maybe bad, everything will be great
yeah,
for all
yeah,
of us.
yeah, yeah. There's I think a lot of that, and especially in the political circles and that we run in, radical circles, anarchist circles, and it's really a mistake. It misunderstands anarchism, of course, and not just in terms of like endorsing this bloodlust, I think, and like pointless violence, but in terms of like misunderstanding the anarchist critique of things, like you said, as if it was just those people over there that were oppressing us now, and we just had to get rid of them instead of something about systems and institutions. Um,
And just
yeah,
that this is why every child in middle school should be made to read the Hunger Games because
I've never read the Hunger Games. I've seen
the
the
third
movies.
book has I mean, it's a bit sloppy, but to me, the overriding message in a lot of that is that a very justifiable war will still destroy you as a person and will destroy a lot of other things. Which I think
Yeah,
is quite a message for a YA book to hold. But it really, like, that's what happens.
yeah, I definitely got some of that from the films.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's been a while since I saw them, but I do recall thinking they had an interesting and unexpected take as the series progressed. Of oh, this isn't as triumphant as I had hoped or
I
expected, and
quite
it's
like
because
that.
yes, and it's because of that approach of not understanding maybe the systems at play. Yeah,
And I was, and to, like, this is a total whiplash from that to, like, everything I've learned about the Haitian Revolution, the most justifiable revolution I've ever heard of, it got so bad and such sadistic violence. And in that case, I'm not going to be like, I would have done better, because,
right.
but at the same time, you're like, wow, the most justifiable reason to rise up. And it's still turned into some stuff that, if nothing else, you probably shouldn't be like, yeah, that's great. You know? Like,
Oh,
haven't we
I
learned yet that from soldiers that, like, killing people is bad for most of us? You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and
Oh, yeah, yeah,
the people who have problems are the ones that it's not bad for, that
yeah.
doesn't damage them.
Yeah, I mean, even defensive killing can. I mean, I've heard many people speak about how they had some experience and they had to defensively kill someone or shoot someone, and how it has such a psychic toll.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if it's defensive to like it matters in terms of its moral justifiability, but the effect it has on your psyche and your character and your soul, metaphorical or otherwise. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, I think people really underrate that. It's really easy to, I think, look at all this systems analysis like we've been saying about from this anarchist lens, and then kind of it feels natural to have maybe that impulse, um, of revolution by any means,
Mm-hmm.
um, but ultimately it ends up being very empty and expressive, and totally overrates how useful revolutions are, um, even when they're undertaken by the oppressed, and they many times have, and then lead to perhaps something also bad, or maybe something worse. Not all, so.
I mean, what they call accelerationism to me smacks of right wing
Oh yeah,
sort of chaos and overthrowing stuff. And that obviously sounds bad to us, and revolution sounds almost inherently like, yeah. I mean, at least in
right.
most cases, but they can be almost the same thing sometimes. Like you got to be real careful with that stuff.
Oh no, yeah,
And
and
maybe we're
I
too cautious, even rhetorically, on that. I think we've talked about that a little bit, but still, I mean, I think the vibe on the left and among anarchists is not cautious enough in some ways, and just,
oh definitely.
of course, it'll be
Oh,
better if we,
I
throw it all
yeah.
aside and overturn it all.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's not cautious because of conservative critiques that are like freedom. Freedom is inherently, comes with all these risky downsides. I usually disagree on that stuff, but I agree.
Mm.
It's not cautious in the sense of thinking the best way to get to freedom is, or increasing freedom marginally, even, is some sort of mass, violent, revolutionary sort of activity, where I think that's doomed to unleash more than you intend, more violent. It's like playing with fire, right? And so there's these prudential concerns and public choice concerns about the incentives involved and like what you're setting up. And it doesn't seem, in general, I don't think as conducive to freedom as people who support freedom think.
I mean, think of all the CIA assassinations throughout the 20th century, frequently of terrible despots,
Right.
and how bad the U.S. did it. Helped it in Guatemala, and I believe that resulted in a 30-year civil war.
Yeah.
Obviously, Iran is, British and U.S. I forget all who was involved in that. That gave, Iran the wonderful theocracy they have today. People who do in fact suck. I mean, Saddam Hussein. Things got a little dicey. I think I might pick living under Saddam Hussein as opposed to ISIS. And maybe now it's well, great, we don't have either, but getting rid of the bad guy is, there's so much
Right.
more to think about.
Right.
Otherwise we would be great neocons thinking the CIA can just with a
Yeah.
with one gun and one poison umbrella can fix everything.
Yeah. I think that's a funny but very illuminating analogy, actually. Yeah.
I mean, leftists trust the people more, right? But
Well, no, yeah. The point is just that regime change is not itself a solution, right? I mean, it's about, I guess, developing a viable alternative regime, hopefully with more liberty. And so that's the hard part. It's much easier to change a regime, but to like replace it with something more viable and better is very difficult and takes time and takes like bottom up, decentralized, gradual processes. I think, and doesn't happen overnight, whether from like a revolution inside the country or some sort of intervention, from the outside.
and if nothing else, you would need a lot of both. The very scary to the U.S. government Black Panthers would feed kids, right? Like you gotta do all the social stuff that I unfortunately don't do. um, you gotta build that society before you break the old one, and maybe you can
Yeah.
cushion the fall of the old one even.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're totally in agreement with that. And it's frustrating to see what feels like such expressive bloodlust, like you said, get out the guillotines, like, um, amongst radicals
Sounds
with,
like is that.
with aspirational, ideals, but
I mean, the guillotines at some point is just the helicopter, like the Pinochet libertarians, so-called libertarians deciding to go fascist. The many
yeah.
jokes about helicopters and Pinochet, and how we should throw all the commies out and stuff. I mean,
I don't see much of a difference there at all. I tend to treat them the same, and I think they're variations on the same sort of mistake, both analytical and emotional. And it's a shame, and it's totally ahistorical, especially because the guillotine being used against other radicals and anarchists, very
absolutely.
commonplace at the time, that we associate with it. So it's it's so strangely short-sighted in a way, and that's why it feels so expressive, and that's why it feels so annoying, I guess. um, it doesn't even really feel connected to, oh, I have a concrete like idea here of how I can like make society better in some way.
It's just right now that person's bad, and
Yeah.
I mean, maybe often they're right, but that's You need more than that.
Yes. And this is the root of conspiracy and that way of looking at the world and that way of viewing at the world and thinking it's a conspiracy among those people. And so we have to get out those people who are conspiring against us, and
Right.
then things would be solved. And it's all, it's all a problem of like those people over there with their plans.
That's I think that's one great reason why people are conspiracy theorists, because what to me does not sound reassuring and sounds like an impossible godlike level of control, to them often is, well, if you just kill all 12 members of the Bilderberg
Right.
Mason, whatever society, and then we'll be free.
Yeah.
Whereas to me, if
Yes.
that's how it went, everything I believe about human nature would be wrong. And the amount
Right.
of control that those the puppet masters,
Yes.
But there's one enemy we can slay, and then the book ends, and we're all happy. And,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not how it goes.
Yeah.
Reassuring to them.
It's a very easy kind of worldview, I think, to have. There's a great article on C4SS by Logan Glitterbaum that talks about a lot of this, about um, all the way from the protocols, the Elders of Zion,
Yeah.
to modern day QAnon, and how they sort of lack that looking at institutions that you need to get a real solution or to really understand what's going on. And so, sometimes radicals get caught, I think get seduced in a way by like these much easier ways of like explaining oppression and remedying, hopefully, oppression. And it's very frustrating. And it's a shame too, because it totally goes against, and is really unreconcilable with generally the anarchist way of looking at the world. Because what it is, right? I mean, Adam Smith talks about like the man of system, the person who looks at society and sees a chessboard and sees instruments to be kind of manipulated and moved without any choice or will of their own or motion of their own. And it's just that, but in reverse, where you think that you're one of the chess pieces, and these other people up there are the men of system that have acquired this massive level of control and coordination and secrecy. That doesn't seem like it would be possible or viable when you think about why people think the government is bad at doing stuff, or why, like, the whole point of anarchism is that you can control society like a chessboard. But if you think it already is being controlled like a chessboard and it's just by the wrong people, you're not an anarchist anymore, or you really lost the plot.
Suddenly you're the most normie Democrat in the world in some ways. Like that
Well,
the best guy in charge of, the state. And I don't know, when the Republican runs for office again, forget everything you ever knew and all your confidence in the government until the next Democrat.
yeah. No, you're totally right. I mean, there's a kind of a weaker, less comprehensive version of this same exact ideology or same worldview at play, and just the ordinary, like, statist ideology that, runs American politics, and like viewing your guy as the guy to fix things, right? And it's just a question of like who has the reins of the state. Okay, then.
And obviously harm reduction exists. You can have a worse guy and a better guy.
Oh yeah, I don't mean to deny that. And we got into that.
But I mean, that sometimes it turns into like, well, nuclear war and welfare are both fueled by tax dollars, so they're exactly the same. I'm straw manning, but not that far,
Well, yeah. You're tempted.
For cutting the budget of the state, I'm gonna end with cutting, libraries and public defenders. Like, I'm gonna do it in an order. I'm not gonna.
Right. Yeah. I mean, conspiracy theorist people like get stuck in that mode of like, well, their people are never in charge, so they just stay in critical mode. Whereas like the ordinary Republicans and Democrats, they're taking turns with who's in charge, so they take turns with making like what are ultimately probably unnuanced and opportunistic criticisms of the other people in power, but then making complete, like you said, apologetics and like just ignoring the bad things that their people do when they're in power, because that's what you have to do by the logic of the system.
I'm actually now starting to think that not only is conspiracy dangerous because it's, MK Ultra notwithstanding, like, usually conspiracy is not true or is unproven, but maybe a very belief in the possibility of that level of control is actually more foundationally problematic, because then you do believe in that possibility of control, that humans can be controlled. And suddenly, if you pass, the drug law and the anti-sex worker law, and don't let the kids read that, then everyone will follow, the law because that's what you said, and that's that. And it's the irresistible impulse that everyone has,
Yeah.
including for something that sounds more understandably tempting, like guns. Like, okay, there was a horrifying massacre, let's ban the guns, and
Yeah.
therefore people react in kind. And the refusal to accept that that is not how it works and will ever work is
Yeah.
that's such a huge thing.
If you think the world runs on a conspiracy, then the question is, how do you get in on the conspiracy? Almost like that's the natural, like, and it's not just these, because you take conspiracy broadly enough, right? Like well, all human action, all cooperation involves people planning and cooperating to do something together, right? But like what people have in mind, what conspiracy theorists have in mind, is one big conspiracy. It's like not that it's not just MK Ultra or MLK being killed by the FBI, which now we know are accurate. It's that these are all like united by some sort of grand conspiracy, and they're all interconnected and reveal this totally totalitarian sort of vision. Where instead of, like, yes, of course, I mean the world is made up of decentralized conspiracies all interacting in a way, but like it's where you get to the point where you think there's one big conspiracy running everything.
So that's very QAnon to me. That was the ultimate. It's like a meta study, whatever they call a study of scientific studies. Like, yeah, it was like all conspiracies under the conspiracy. We'll take it. Yeah, they're all legitimate. They're all under this banner of Pizzagate, lizards, etc.
Yeah. And that goes back for QAnon. I mean, the history of conspiracies is very interesting. In many ways, you don't get fascism without conspiracies and viewing the world as run by this interconnected group. I mean, cabal itself as a term is specifically related to Jewish origins, and people use it just more generally now. And that there's a lot of stuff done on why conspiracy theorists tend to all settle on Jews as the ultimate conspirators. There's sort of this convergence on
classic
on that. So yeah, it's very frustrating. But it's not. I don't think it's anything particularly new to QAnon. David Icke also did a lot of stuff in the '90s where he was connecting a lot of the popular conspiracies sort of together, and so sort of amalgamating them into one big plan.
I saw him speak and wrote an article about it.
Yeah,
and I interviewed various people. Some seemed perfectly nice. One referenced Hitler in a very concerning way. It was for journalistic reasons. It was a fun day, though. I saw him speak for 6 hours out of 12, which is insane.
I couldn't do that.
But the ending to my article, I couldn't have wished for it. It was just there. So I'm getting into my Uber to leave, and I heard two women talk about the protocols of the Elders of Zion as if it was real. And that was the last thing I heard from this crowd. I was like, well, there's my ending also. Ooh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Still doing that?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty major in Icke stuff. I've read some of his stuff. They're pretty major. He makes a very a major attempt of his to say, okay, there are these protocols. Everyone mistakenly thinks that they're bunked, and they're not. He also makes a concerted effort to he's very much aware of the anti-Semitism, and what his views are on the anti-Semitism are another question. He's aware. Yeah. And so he also makes a fairly concerted attempt at saying, hey, let's rename them. I don't want the anti-Semitic connotations. So he calls for renaming them the Protocols of the Elders of, I can't remember now.
Lizard.
And I wish I could. I think perhaps just the elites, or some. It was a generic,
that's
a much more generic.
From him than I realized, because I have only seen him speak, and he seems almost kind of guileless and sort of optimistic when he speaks. Like, oh, the world is run by lizard people, but we can do something about it. And that's
how his books are too, and I think that's a major appeal. It really appeals to people with that kind of new agey sense of, like you said, optimism and sense of hope and sense of like love conquering all. I mean, he makes very explicit arguments that kind of connect these new age concepts of like love to like his half-baked views on science and like quantum mechanics. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Sure.
But I didn't mean to say that because my read of him trying to rename the protocols is not positive. I mean, I think it's ultimately a very deceptive attempt
Hmm.
at uh, further submerging the anti-Semitic roots and ultimately anti-Semitic conclusions, and disguising them as something that's much more moderate and appealable to the average person. And then only later do you get to the arguments. Well, the Holocaust, didn't happen like we thought, or it.
Does he does he talk about that
Yeah,
specifically?
yeah, he definitely engaged in Holocaust denial, and more generally blames the Holocaust, among also the World Wars and slavery and a lot of things, on Jews and international Jewish financiers,
Lovely.
and in some ways just also kind of victim blames the Jews during the Holocaust in terms of. So it's a lot of the usual. I mean, these aren't original
Yeah.
arguments to him, but they do come along in mixed in with all of this. Well, love will win the day, and so, I encourage anyone to actually read his stuff. I don't know if anyone listening here would find any of it persuasive. I hope you don't, especially because what we're saying. But it's interesting to first of all, it's entertaining in its own perverse way.
Hmm.
And once you accept that it's meant sincerely, or at least meant in a way that's meant to convince others for some purpose, then it's depressing, but it's also enlightening to get a sense of, I think, because it really explains a lot. I mean, Ick in particular, but just generally the conspiracists. And you can see ways of going wrong with reasoning and ways of going wrong with radical, well-intentioned ideas that, and see lines of argument that pop up elsewhere, even in more mainstream, less fringe people. Um, I don't know. I think it's interesting stuff, and terrible stuff. I mean, I think he's one of the worst popular authors uh, in the last 50 years in terms of his effect on our culture and stuff. And a lot of people don't know his name, but his stuff is totally percolated into the general culture.
I'm sure more people are sort of jokingly aware of the like lizard people, reptilians concept than they know his name, to be sure.
Yeah, and I've interacted with people who I saw a thread on Twitter that was asking, what are the more harmless conspiracies? I'm curious, all the conspiracies are so bad. We talk about the bad
Right.
ones. What are the harmless ones without? And someone, well intentioned and sincerely said that people think lizards run the world, and I
Right.
had to jump in and say, well, that's not necessarily harmless if you actually go back to the originators of that view and stuff. It's absolutely connected to anti-Semitism and stuff, like all the other conspiracies.
I used to try to hope for like to find the least bad billionaire, the least damaging conspiracy theory. I'm always on the hunt for these things. And I used to, back in the day, Alex Jones was always out of his mind. But I read John Ronson's book where he and Alex Jones like sneak into Bohemian Grove and like have wacky adventures. So like the appeal of just like the weirdness, from the days of the weirder, less contained, less corporate internet, it somehow
For sure.
it wasn't everywhere as much. Presidents hadn't gone on Alex Jones. But I mean, like now I'm starting to think, God, like the X Files was probably a net bad for humanity because there's so much shit about vaccinations in there and like the level of it's all a story and I love that story, but I don't know, some of these
I've
ideas
never
spread.
I've never watched the X Files, but
There's like a
bit
this
aware of.
big smallpox vaccine
Mhm.
conspiracy. I forget if it
Well,
was like a tagging system for humans and the aliens. It's been a little while, but
I see. Well,
yeah.
kind of analogously, at least something I'm much more familiar with, is the Matrix. I think that's a very interesting question too. Is the Matrix a net bad? Are we living in the world of the Matrix, not in the sense of some AI world, but in a world where everyone thinks they're living in the Matrix and everyone thinks they're Neo? I mean, there in terms of the zeitgeist and cultural symbolism, the red pill is
Ugh, those poor
really up
directors
there.
are so annoyed by what happened with that, and I don't blame.
I couldn't imagine. I'm annoyed. I mean, I grew up loving The Matrix. It's a beautiful movie, and they intended it as an allegory for nothing right wing, but
I
radical
wish.
left
I
wing
mean,
anarchists and trans allegory as well has become more apparent. And the idea
there
that
was
their
the one.
symbol was hijacked is so depressing.
There was the one character who they initially supposedly thought about they would be, you know, female in the Matrix and
Yeah.
male in the outside world, or vice versa. And I'm like, oh, come on, you could have gotten away with that level of shielding. You know, Hollywood wouldn't have been like, wait a minute, this is secret trans propaganda. Like, they could have pushed for more of that. And it
A
still could
lot.
have been co-opted, I'm quite sure.
Yeah,
The
anything
pill
can be
stuff
co-opted.
is so obnoxious to me because it
Yeah,
turns into just another lingo of, you know, like,
yeah.
oh, I'm white pilled about the black pill.
I mean, anything can be co-opted, I think, is the unfortunate truth. But also, some things are more easily co-opted than others. And I do think it's interesting and enlightening, and helps, especially fans of the Matrix, and especially fans of the Matrix who read a lot of their politics in the Matrix, like radical anarchists, which I don't think is totally wrong at all. But useful for them, I think, would be to step back and see how it's easy to go wrong with the Matrix and the worldview presented by the Matrix and the kind of attitudes and impulses that, and you can see why it was hijacked. And I think you can see why so many people. I mean, speaking of the Matrix and David Icke, that is a huge term for David Icke, huge, and that, a lot of that goes from before
Oh
the
yeah, I
movie.
guess it is. I've seen
A
that
lot of that
too.
goes from before the movie came out in '99. He was writing that stuff in the early mid '90s, and so I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's there's so many ways to go wrong with like trying to really see, get past your cultural presuppositions you grow up with, and seeing past them and thinking about things deeper as you mature, and trying to get to the root of things and being radical, in that sense of stuff. There's so many ways to go wrong with it and to be misled as well, and it's hard. And even something I think as grand as the Matrix, which in many ways I think pushed me towards some of those views, or at least made me more open to them once I encountered them in more explicit forms later on.
That's
Even
cool.
something like the Matrix, has such an enduring and in some ways negative effect on our culture. It's hard. It's very pressing.
I mean, that's why I guess I start to think maybe, you know, I shouldn't blame any one thing. Like, as much as anti-religious I am, I can name so many really amazing people who are better than I will ever be, who in fact, you know, believed very strongly, often in Christianity, are the ones I'm aware of, but I'm sure other religions too. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
in some ways, a lot of things are what you make of them, what you take out of them, which almost makes me think, you know,
Yeah.
it's again like what kind of person you are already, and
Yeah.
it almost maybe, which starts to make me feel like it's fatalistic. I don't want that either, but some people are
I think
very good no matter what, and they take good out of things that are neutral, if nothing else.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think taken too far, yeah, you're right. It is fatalism, I guess. It's wrong to take that too far, but it's also wrong to just to say, yeah, to make those sort of comprehensive sort of judgments about, say, something like religion, and how it maybe interacts with a given person's life and behavior and values. Yeah, I mean, I've softened on religion a lot over the years. I'm not
Have you?
religious. Yeah, and I've talked about it a little bit. I guess maybe not. I don't know if we've talked about it, but what do we mean when we're talking about religion? I mean, a lot of people, the abstract theological views, which I view as unjustified, and sometimes I think sort of corrupting in terms of your ability to navigate the world,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe like uh, but at the same time, religion, I think, came about in large part because it really did help us solve various collective action problems, and that's why it goes with community and ritual and these sorts of things, which is what a lot of religious people, I think, center more of their relationship to it on than like the abstract theological arguments or philosophical debates. And that stuff is sort of that, but most of it is just this. It's habits, it's your community, it's like a place to go on Sundays, a place to go where and so that role, I mean, we're going to need something to replace that. We're going to need something better that can help solve collective action problems if we're going to move beyond religion.
Just go to Unitarian Church. I used to go to Unitarian Church. They sing hymns that are like vaguely positive hymns that have, you know, cut God out of them. Like,
Yeah,
everyone be nice, love.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I've gone to, me and my wife went to a number of Quaker services, which really, really rewarding. The Quakers are cool as far as religions go. I think they're super non-hierarchical.
Historically, they get so many of the points, you know.
Yeah, they're super. Historically, they're very interesting and very amenable to radicals, to pacifists in particular. I met people there who had.
Hmm.
I met an old man there who was wearing these buttons, and he was talking about protesting Vietnam all the way back in the day, and like so,
Yeah.
and they're totally non-hierarchical, and a lot of the things about religion that I find unfavorable and don't really make sense to me, it jettisons that, I think, to some degree. And we would just go 7 a.m. on in the morning,
It's
and
pretty early for
you sit in. Well, we like it was kind of a way. Hey,
yeah.
excuse to get up early, and we'd
Hmm.
go, and it was kind of this big room, and you just sit for silence in an hour. So it's kind of like meditation in a way. I
Yeah.
mean, so
Interesting crossover, perhaps.
it was a lot of fun, and valuable, and I would encourage anyone to check out if they have like Quaker stuff around. It was very cool, and we don't have to be Quakers to go and experiment.
I also have been meaning to look up Sikhs more because some of their their founding guy in the 15th century was like, ladies are just as swell as the fellas. And there's some other good stuff.
Is that what he said?
Something like
Is
that.
that an
Yeah.
exact quote?
All the stuff I read, this is straight up Wikipedia, but
Well, it's news
still,
to
I
me.
was
It's
like, it
very
all sounded pretty legit. So
very interesting.
shout out to
No,
that.
there's a reason. There's got to be a reason religion's been so enduring. It's not random, and
Is
it's
it not just the fear of the dark? I mean, it's
okay.
part of it.
But then why is the fear of the dark so enduring? And are we getting rid of that anytime soon? So then, I'm worried. I would be worried if we can't develop these alternative forms of community, or sources of meaning and narrative in our lives. If we can't develop, non-religious, are they somehow inherently tethered to these religions and these like symbols and conceptions of the supernatural and various things? Like
I don't
they
think so.
have been
Maybe
they
in
have been for
part.
thousands of years,
Yeah.
and I hope they're not. We're finding out, I guess, but
I mean, there's some
I mean,
good
I'm not gonna.
stories, you know? Fucking hero's journey. Like, there's
Absolutely,
Scientology sucks because it's like a cheap, low budget sequel
I
to
love
like
that.
old religions where,
Yeah.
Jesus, you got a cool like prequel with his birth, and then you have, I don't know, like you have a sort of compelling man, It's not
Oh,
just
absolutely.
gobbledygook about Xenu and Boeings and
I love that
space.
description of Scientology, though. I think that's so accurate. I mean, stories are enduring. Stories and humanity go together like peanut butter and jelly. And like I've definitely, I think, softened on religion more to the extent that I've kind of critically reflected on, just on the genre of superheroes and
Yeah,
the role that like you said, these characters or these heroes' journeys play in our lives. I mean the tension between the godly and the human that underlies Jesus absolutely underlies Superman and many, many, many superhero conflicts and their conflicts with their identity,
yeah.
civilian and super. And you find these themes all throughout, and so it made me reflect more and see that this stuff's much older than the 1930s, and is appealing.
I mean, but like, Superman, I'm sure, he's done everything because every comic, everything is possible that has happened to every superhero. But, our best, most Boy Scout Superman is, the appeal is very simple. Someone with that power, being that kind and decent and human. I mean, God, you're in comparison to Jesus, that's very intriguing, but so much of religion is not about the human slash divine man of Jesus. It's about an insane list of rules that have caused so much misery. The interpretation of them has caused even more misery. Um,
Yeah,
it's the rules, the theorized punishment. That's always the most insane to me. I mean,
right.
of late, in the last COVID years, I've been annoyed by, lack of science being a thing, but also I don't, I was liberal arts. But at the end of the day, religion is most bad to me because of what it does to people. Not as much because it destroys certain critical reasoning, maybe, but more the idea that people get tormented. People get spiritually tormented by their own parents. They develop OCD about like everyone will die and will go to hell if I don't do every day, and like it terrifies people. And I learned more and more about that from the Reddit Fundy Snark Reddit stuff about the Duggars. It's a Baptist subsect, but it's bigger than you wish it was. It's more dangerous. It's more powerful in the United States. And they just torment people for their entire lives. And there's nothing good about it, from what I can tell. And I honestly became more down in religion entirely from reading people's stories. And then how many of them escaped from that life. But just like, it's doing nothing for anyone, that kind of religion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't know it myself. I was not raised religious, right? My parents,
I wasn't either, and that's why I wasn't
right.
pissed off at religion for so long, because nobody all I had to do was not swear around the other homeschoolers I knew because they were religious. Like, that's all, you know?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I've definitely gotten to know people who grew up religious and then later became not religious, who have even harsher than me for many of these reasons perspective on it, and that makes a lot of sense. And I agree with that. I think that's definitely one of the worst things that religion continues to get us. It's this. I really think it's a degradation of the worldly, of the material, right? I mean, it's this obsession with
Always.
some promised, supernatural end to us, whether good or bad, whether above or below.
Now. I mean, forget the world. Yeah.
Right. Forget the now, forget the world. And I think that, and this tension is reflected in Jesus. And like, to go back to that kind of dichotomy. And like, so ultimately, I think like, right, to go too far to the disrespecting the human, the material, to this world, and being obsessed with a later world or another world. And it might just be the world of your imagination. And, that I agree can have horrible psychic effects. I mean, I've met people that have suffered that.
Or even like when I start thinking too much about it, I think like I would have been like, Jesus, buddy, you don't have to do this. I swear to God. Like you seem like a pretty cool guy. You got some great ideas. Can't you just like, I don't know, like flee somewhere? Just like, you don't have to do this, man.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of love the idea of like, kind of like a hole in Jesus, like, hey, come on, bud.
Why do you want somebody who apparently was that intelligent and enlightened to be, killed at 32 in a very unpleasant fashion?
Yeah. And you have a similar issue with Socrates. There's a lot of weird similarities with them as historical figures.
Pissed at Socrates.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lot older than that. He's like double that age, but similar
still,
issue, the exact same issue.
Why?
Yeah, and I don't know, and this connects to a lot of the connections between Christianity and Plato and Platonism, and how Christians tried to incorporate Plato and his views of the forms and stuff into their ideas. And I think there's a mistake underlies both, where Plato also favored too much the world of the forms and disregarded the material world of our senses. Maybe it's getting a little too weird, but
I'm learning over here, man, because I don't know
Well, I just think it's a similar. I mean, this in some ways Aristotle can be read as bringing Plato down from the clouds, right? Like, emphasizing again the worldly, the human, the material, the senses, and not. And rejecting that kind of denial, like self-denial and self-negation in a way that comes with a lot of these doctrines that I dislike and think is bad.
Wow, we really just tackled all of humanity now.
Yeah, we figured it out. This is our last podcast. There's no final word. Everyone, you can stop making content. The era of content is over.
That sounds nice, unfortunately, at this point. No more
Too much content.
I mean, this is a podcast, but
yeah, we're literally making content right now.
We're literally making a podcast. It's disgusting.
We're content creators. Is that what you say to people when they ask them, what do you do? Oh, I'm a content creator.
No, I say I'm a writer and editor, kind of, and then I change the subject usually.
Yeah, I say I'm a writer, and then they ask me of what, and I say like philosophy, and then they change the subject. That's pretty common. That's pretty common. But I've always wanted to kind of say, I'm a content creator.
That's because it sounds annoying, but
yeah, I mean, it's like the worst possible answer. I feel like I hope I'm never
worse than an influencer. I mean,
oh no, that's worse. I should say I'm an influencer.
Yeah,
that's true.
You could be a philosophy influencer. Do we have those?
Philosophy influencer.
I'm just imagining a beach and like Instagram, but I don't know how we're gonna get the philosophy in there. You can make it happen.
Just a little quote like up in the corner of the picture. I love this idea.
Please do that. I will follow you. I will learn.
I don't use Instagram though.
No, I love Instagram actually, but I'm
Oh,
afraid
yeah?
of Mark Zuckerberg following me, so I stopped.
Oh, he's
I
been
love
following
Instagram
you?
not because of all the like hotties that are supposed to make you feel bad, but for like usually like cute plushes like posing in front of various international locales. Like that was the Instagram that filled me with joy, and I
Sure,
miss it.
sure. That's exactly what I expected you to say.
Yeah, I miss that.
I'm
We'll
sorry
all
for
have
your
to find
loss.
new social media since Twitter is
Now, do
clearly.
we?
Well, social media is the worst, and it's pretty great. So,
That's true.
I mean,
We would barely interact if it wasn't for social media.
same. I think
Yeah,
of all the great people that I've met via social media, either
yeah,
actually, eventually, really, or just like chatted with for
yeah.
years. I think some people never used Twitter the way I did, where I just like, oh, it's that guy again, like, responding to me. I'll respond, like, just like, I don't know.
Yeah, you
Some
can
good
create a
stuff.
little circle of buds. Not like friends, maybe sometimes, but
Sometimes,
mostly buds.
I mean,
Did we get to know each other? No, I mean, when we met in person, did we already interact on Twitter?
I think we're Facebook friends
Oh, we
before.
were. But I
Before
don't know. I added a bunch of people on Facebook. I mean,
Yeah, but
uh,
most of them weren't as good as me, so.
this is true. This is true.
I met some libertarians and anarchists that I met on Tumblr first, which was wild because
Whoa,
Tumblr is very
Tumblr.
last decade.
Tumblr. Really taking it back.
Yeah.
The Tumblr libertarian
Which is
sphere.
not the reputation of Tumblr if it has one at all. I mean, Tumblr is supposed to be where all the things, all the what they call woke or whatever they decide to call it next came from Tumblr. It started there before it ever moved to Twitter, I think.
Sure. It started, with German philosophy, and then went to Tumblr because they were all on Tumblr, and then and then the percolated the rest
Yeah,
of the
I'm
culture.
German and I was on Tumblr.
And here we are.
Ergo.
Oh, there you go. You're the wokest among them. Now the Hitler painting makes sense.
Oh no, I don't have a Hitler painting. I swear.
I'm going to tell people you have a collection of Hitler paintings.
I mean,
Now, whether that means it's paintings Hitler painted or paintings you made of Hitler, I'll leave up to
one
them
of
to
those. See, one
decide.
of those is worse. One of those is much worse.
What if they're paintings you made of Hitler, like dying gruesome deaths in the guillotine and in submersibles under the ocean?
Someone maybe has done that. Someone's working on that right
Someone's got. I
now.
just gave them the idea now. The AI will be listening and they'll like zoom it up, send it to us.
Well, we didn't get to some other stuff that maybe will keep a little more than unfortunate rich people under the ocean.
Well, we've had a pretty meandering little. We're over an hour. Wow.
I know, but I think we solved many of philosophy's greatest questions. So
We did.
I don't know what we'll do next time.
Never
We might have
gonna
to solve some kind of disease or
solve the disease. Yeah, for sure. I'll put that on my list, my to-do list. Solve the disease next month. But maybe we should. I keep seeing comments. Do people not like that we go over an hour? Because the whole point is we flout the rules. I thought.
I mean, I commented on YouTube for the algorithm that it was Lucy and CORY'S
For the algorithm,
anti-power in 20 minutes or something. So
anti-power hour and 20 minutes. Yeah.
it's a little more unwieldy, but
We can put little parentheses in the logo, like underneath, like little text and 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, make Steven or anyone else do more work. That's what I hope.
Well, that's my goal in life.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, that's why we work so well together.
Well, we should end with something fun. I didn't get to talk about how I'm sad that Daniel Ellsberg died, because Daniel Ellsberg was a very cool human that I had kind of a terrible interview with a couple years ago, because he's very smart and slightly domineering in interviews, but was also
well, I read great,
an American hero. And I was very tempted, if he hadn't been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, fuck that shit, a couple months ago, I would have been tempted to try to get him on the Non Serviam podcast.
Holy shit.
And I almost, even the last few months, I almost was like, I'm not gonna, you know what, it's okay. I got it.
Yeah, it's tough.
Because he was doing a lot of anti-nuke stuff, like right until the end and stuff, and it just...
Right.
I hate that
Man.
Henry Kissinger is outliving him. That sucks.
This is true. Have you thought about getting him on the Non Serviam podcast?
Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, has that been on your radar at all?
Non Serviam Podcast is usually not as contentious as that. We discussed me talking to people that are terrible, which is what
Like
this
who?
podcast is. Just kidding. Well, I've had fun
That's
interviewing.
right. I walked
people.
into that.
I had a lot of fun interviewing people that suck.
Oh, I know. It's like your favorite people to interview, I think.
Because I'm not scared of them.
I know. I love it. Because you
You know?
interviewed Sheriff Joe.
Yeah, exactly. Who was also
Big one.
a ridiculous old man, but a terrible one. Yeah, like what's to be scared of? Fucking, I interviewed Milo Yiannopoulos when I was like legitimately drunk, and I did a great job.
I remember that. I remember that person.
Good people are scary though, because you want to be smart and you don't want them to.
That's kind of a lovely attitude, really. Like, I'm not scared of evil people. I don't care what they think of me, but good people.
I should try to keep that alive. But Daniel Ellsberg was very cool, and
yeah, people should go read your interview with him. Wasn't on Reason.
It was on Reason.
Yeah,
people should read his very scary book about nukes. It's legitimately scary. It made me wonder how I got to be born at all, because there are so many troubling close calls.
Yeah,
and also let's fucking support Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden, people who are the new Daniel Ellsberg, who are more. I saw a bunch of people tweeting, including John Cusack, about how people, who said they supported Ellsberg hated all the new whistleblowers. And I genuinely think it's because Ellsberg was safely in the past, even though he kept his shit going and supported all those other people. Ellsberg was done. He led to a good Supreme Court case about free speech. He's not threatening. If somebody leaks now, you have to find, you have to find a side for that and what you think about it. And it's scary when it's now instead of safely in the past. So I just think people fall to that.
That's a great point.
Easy. It's very status quo-y.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's
true. So R.I.P. Daniel Ellsberg. And also I saw Taylor Swift, and I'm still recovering from the No.
Shit, dude. Was she in the
No.
I'm not keeping up. Oh, you saw her.
That was my all too abrupt segue so that we could end with something positive.
It depends on your opinions on Taylor Swift.
It does.
Yeah, and I'm a centrist. Like, I like some of her songs for sure. I don't really know much about her as a person. I don't have opinions about that.
I mean, I think she's like a sort of, a very rich,
She's very rich.
I mean,
very mean?
No,
I can see that.
I just
mean to you personally?
Concerts, and this is the biggest concert. It's like 70,000 people. It was crazy.
Holy
crap. A very duality of man and duality of my feelings towards man at a good concert, because it's the happiest, purest. We're all in this together. We're all happy, and somebody's annoying. Multiple people are annoying, and I hate them. Why are they so like selfishly yakking? Why can't they like appreciate this on as many levels as I am? I hate them. Woo, this is the best thing ever. So it was
that's the eternal struggle with concerts. Also, like movies, I feel like.
Movies, at least, I mean, I don't care for that, but you can duplicate that. A concert, you mostly can't.
Oh, that's fair. Like, you could watch a movie at home. But also, I just mean like people talking in the theater, on their phone in the theater.
Yeah.
But yes, concerts, obviously. I mean, you could record a concert and just watch it at home, though. Like,
I think a lot of people do that, which I also find a little weird. I am not fun to go to concerts with. My friends, like, most of them eventually pick up that, like, I'm not going to talk that much. I'm not going to pick up my phone that much. I want you all to be quiet so I can...
Yeah, well, that's why you're there. I don't know. I think I'd like going to a concert. We should go to a concert. Maybe like Bryan Adams or something.
Brian, Ryan, whichever one gets there first.
Well...
Diane. And what are other names that kind of rhyme? I don't know.
I think I agree, though. People are on their phones a little... Like, I'll take some pictures throughout the night. Maybe like a couple, and then maybe I'll record a minute of like my favorite song, like at most. But like people that are like Snapchatting their friends or TikToking, I'm not really up on these days. But all throughout the concert, yeah. Well, yeah.
Like,
the FaceTime is even worse. Yeah, but just like if you have your phone out,
I don't even know if he liked Taylor Swift, but his mom was still like screaming at him on video chat.
Oh God. If your phone is out for more than like 40% or 50% of the concert, it's too much.
I'm gonna give you a side eye. But honestly, at this point, even that doesn't bother me as much. It's just like some songs are quiet or prettier or sadder. Don't talk over it as soon as it gets quiet enough to talk. Like, it's
Oh, I
so
hate that.
annoying.
Yes, that is the worst.
But like, I mean, it was a good show. It was well worth it to be a million
That's
miles
cool.
away and to pay money. And she is pretty legit, so
Cool.
and like
Sounds fun.
people traded bracelets with strangers. Almost everybody was super nice. Like, it was a good human moment.
That's good.
So I recommend it.
That's good. I don't think I'm going to see Taylor Swift, but
She's behind you. Watch out.
You have a cowl on, Taylor.
Um,
I saw Paramore.
Oh, really?
A couple weeks ago. A big fan of Paramore. That was a lot of fun. Never saw that before.
I don't really know them. I was just looking up a couple of their songs yesterday.
Oh yeah.
It was like a free association from Taylor Swift to Olivia Rodrigo to Paramore.
Huh.
So like, but yeah, I've actually wondered about Paramore for a while, and I've in fact purchased hair dye from Hayley Williams' hair.
Yeah, I know she sells her own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm more experienced with her on my head than in my ears.
Yeah, I've been listening to Paramore for years. And yeah, they're a lot of fun. A lot of fun in concert.
Just like generally pop punk. I mean,
so their early stuff was very much pop punk, and I really like pop punk. So I loved it as a kid. But they've definitely evolved over the years to much less punk, but also to a bit of a weirder sound. I really appreciate the way they've kind of changed. Their last two albums have been more interesting, both musically and lyrically. And there's kind of a fun, almost like a funky sound to it. It's some of their stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you would like it, but yeah, I saw them, and
there's a fairly good chance I would. At least that's not, that's in the neighborhood.
I think if you like Taylor Swift, maybe you'd like stuff off their new album that came out like last year, I think, called like "This Is Why." But yep.
Yeah, I've been thinking lately I need to get into more artists, because concerts are such a joy.
They
took me a while to not, like, I think I got a slight cold. I don't think I got COVID, but there's good. Still that factor. But
for sure,
a lot of people I liked died or broke up in the last couple of years. So
dude,
I need to find some new people that I love enough, and I really can't fake it. Like, there was one opener, and I wanted to be like, be nice to the openers, but like, I was kind of like,
oh sure, yeah, the eternal struggle of people dying and then having to find new people to spend your life with. And
I mean, I saw Ralph Stanley once, and he was 85 when I saw him.
85, holy shit. Holy shit. I mean, we saw Blondie, who I absolutely adore, and she's like in her 80s, I think. Saw her like a couple months ago.
That's weird that they could be,
And she's on stage. She was dancing. She was so lively for a woman in her 80s. I think she's in her 80s.
All right, we gotta check. I don't check. I mean, hold on, I gotta check right now.
I often ask people. I think a really fun question is like, what band or artist would you from the past would you see that you can't see anymore? If you could see one, if you could go back in time and see one.
All right, Debbie Harry is 77. And she was born Angela Trimble, which is weird. That's not a bad name. Okay, we learned. We're learning.
Yeah, well, it's never the real names.
Sometimes. I still, even though my Clash obsession was like 15, 16, 17, I mean, they were awesome. So they'd be pretty high on my list if I got to time travel. Like,
the Clash is a great answer.
Yeah.
That's a great
Joe
answer.
Strummer was so legit. But there's a lot of weird country, like how about fucking Hank Williams, somebody that,
ooh, that's a fun answer.
Somebody who didn't last that long but was fucking amazing.
Yeah.
If I had a time machine, I'm making a lot of stops.
Yeah. That's a great answer too. Like someone who was only around for a minute, like Jimi Hendrix or something as well. Like just people who died young. I've never actually thought about that kind of answer. That's great. That makes a lot of sense.
My dad's Janis Joplin, which is legit.
Wow.
That's good.
That's cool. My answer usually is I would say Rush, who I just missed out on.
Oh, really?
because
Fun.
they only broke up a few years ago, and then Neil Peart died. But it was before I didn't do concerts for a long time. They were tough for me to get acclimated to.
Yeah.
So my era of going to concerts took place after they became an option.
Just Missing is I hate Just
I
Missing.
know that's sort of So I've gotten really into Rush the last couple of years, and just sounds magnificent to be able to have seen them and live.
My brother and mother love them, especially my brother. So
Yeah.
I'm not very well acquainted. Just Missing sucks. When I was really just like dead pissed that Joe Strummer was dead. I was like, why couldn't I have been the world's coolest 10-year-old and seen him like Joe Strummer and Mescaleros or something before he died? Always somebody good you miss.
Yeah, my answer.
I spent so much fucking money on Taylor Swift just because it's worth it.
Yeah, like once in a lifetime sort of opportunities for sure. My answer,
maybe not, but in case they are, you never know.
Right, exactly. My answer a while back would have been, or definitely up there, would have been Bikini Kill, the '90s girl riot band. But I saw them. Them last year. They got back together and did a tour, and it was kind of mind blowing that for years I listened to them and was like, oh man, this old '90s band that is not together at all that I would love to see. And somehow they got back together. I saw them last year. It felt surreal to see that band live, which was a lot of fun.
Was it how many original people are left?
I thought it was all the major three women. It was Kathleen Hanna at the front, and then I can't remember the other bandmates' names.
I kind of never listened to them, and I always was curious because they sounded so badass, and I never really. A lot of people I haven't checked out enough, but that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, you should. I love Bikini Kill, and Kathleen Hanna did some fun, like a solo album too, which is fun. They're a blast.
I've seen a couple of 70s. Like, it's weird because we've run out of Ramones, running low on Clashes. But I've seen X twice, and that's fucking all four of the original people.
Whoa, that's cool.
They are very awesome.
That's great.
I saw Stiff Little Fingers, which is an Irish punk band. That was my first punk show.
That's fun.
I don't remember how many of the originals were there, but they were pretty cool. And I saw the Slits, of course, which was like half of them, including the lead singer. And the Slits were a very seminal lady punk band from the dawn of English punk in the late 70s. So that was legit too.
That's very cool. Wow. There's so many that you can just go back and go through, and that would have been fun.
Yeah, just just go to the show if you can go to the show. Even amongst those of us who are introverted, we should, it's probably worth it.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, but you get used to a little more, acclimate to it. It's still tough for me sometimes.
Have you moshed?
No. I mean, maybe the closest was went to an Against Me concert, and we were right at the front, and it got pretty aggressive, but mostly still just like trying to. Mostly, I had my arms around Kelly, on my wife, trying to just
hold her steady.
Yeah, endure the waves of motion, but that was fun. But
yeah, I haven't done that in years, and I was never fully up for it. But it's funny how much if I really love a song, you just
well, sure, yeah, jump in. You just get lost in the moment.
Yeah. And invariably, I would usually fall down, and some dude would just gently throw me out of the pit. It was always legit.
I'd love to see Lucy moshing. That sounds like very enjoyable.
I would truly be one to two songs for a full set of someone I really liked, and finally at the end I'd just be like, wee. That was better. That was more uplifting as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Well, we worked it all out, so
a little over hour 20.
Yeah, you know what? I'm feeling good about this.
I'm feeling good.
Yeah, this was excellent. And I don't know, the people out there, we're not your dancing monkeys or nothing, but God knows if you want to ask us something or us to talk about anything or whatever, we like the feedback.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Sure, you can tweet at us or send us requests of topics, I guess, if anyone really wants to.
At Non Serviam behind the scenes, we talked about having a hotline that people can call in or something weird. So
Non Serviam hotline. You have a red phone,
We're gonna make it more. We're trying to make it more interactive, even if there's two people, prank calling us. I'm hoping we can get
right. That's a great idea. Well, prank calls are just great. I love prank calls. I'd be happy to be prank called.
You can prank call Non Serviam anytime you like.
Yeah.
We'll be really happy about that. Cory, this was a beautiful. We'll be back in the
We'll
next
be back.
few weeks.
Yeah,
Sometime
who
we'll do
knows?
this again.
I'm sure of it.
All right. Goodbye for now.
Bye, everyone.